Emily Carter's hands shook as she gazed at the pile of medical bills covering her small apartment's kitchen table. The faint light from the ceiling lamp cast shadows over a growing stack of papers, each one a stark reminder of her 6-year-old son Liam's deteriorating health. The rare genetic condition that had seemed under control just months ago now threatened to take everything from them, including Liam's life. Outside, the autumn rain tapped against the windows of their modest third-floor walk-up in Chicago, mirroring the tears that threatened to spill from Emily's exhausted eyes. At 29, she had already faced more challenges than most, losing her parents in a car crash at 21, her husband leaving when Liam was diagnosed at 3, and now this, a frantic race against time to save her son's life. "Mommy?" Liam's faint voice called from his bedroom. "Can you read me a story?" Emily quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "Coming, sweetie." She tucked the bills into a drawer, hiding them away like she tried to hide her fears. Walking into Liam's room, her heart ached at the sight of her little boy, so small against the pillows, his once vibrant red hair now thin and lifeless from the medications. "The pirate won?" Liam asked hopefully, his green eyes bright despite his pallor. "Of course, my love," Emily replied, settling beside her son and drawing him close. As she read about swashbuckling adventures and hidden treasures, her mind drifted to the conversation she'd had earlier that day with Dr. Thompson. "There's a treatment," he had said, his kind eyes serious behind his glasses. "An experimental procedure in Germany. The success rate is promising, but..." He hesitated, and Emily had known what was coming. "The cost is substantial. $500,000 minimum." The number had hit her like a physical blow. Even with her 2 jobs, teaching elementary school by day and waitressing at night, she barely kept them afloat. Their insurance had already maxed out, and the modest life insurance policy from her parents had been drained by previous treatments. Later that evening, after Liam had finally drifted off to sleep, Emily sat at her laptop, desperately searching for options. That's when she saw it. A post on an obscure forum about wealthy individuals seeking marriage arrangements for citizenship or business reasons, offering substantial financial compensation in return. Her cursor hovered over the contact information. The thought made her stomach churn, but Liam's labored breathing from the next room steeled her resolve. What wouldn't a mother do to save her child? With trembling fingers, she typed out her message. "Single mother seeking marriage arrangement. Desperately need funds for son's medical treatment. Willing to sign any agreement necessary." The response came faster than she expected from a law firm representing an anonymous client. The terms were simple yet staggering. Marriage for a minimum of 1 year. Complete discretion required. And in return, $1 million, with half paid immediately upon signing the contract. Emily spent the next week in a daze of meetings with lawyers, background checks, and negotiations. She never met her prospective husband. Everything was handled through intermediaries. They told her he was a private businessman who needed a marriage for corporate reasons. She would be required to attend certain public functions, but would otherwise be free to live her life and care for Liam. The morning of the civil ceremony arrived cold and clear. Emily stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the simple white dress she'd bought off the rack. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her makeup minimal but elegant. She looked like a bride, she thought bitterly, but felt more like a woman walking to her execution. "You look pretty, Mommy," Liam said from his wheelchair, his small face beaming. The child thought they were simply meeting one of Mommy's business friends who was going to help them. Emily couldn't bear to explain the full truth. "Thank you, baby," Emily replied, kneeling beside her son and straightening the bow in his hair. "Remember what I told you. After we meet with Mommy's friend, we're going on a special trip to see some very good doctors who are going to help you feel better." The courthouse was nearly empty when they arrived. Emily's best friend and neighbor Megan had come to watch Liam during the ceremony. As Emily walked into the judge's chambers, her heart pounding, she finally saw him, her soon-to-be husband. He stood with his back to her, a tall figure in an impeccably tailored dark suit. As he turned, Emily's world tilted on its axis. She knew that face, those piercing blue eyes, the strong jaw, the slight scar above his left eyebrow. "Michael," she whispered, as a man she'd never thought she'd see again stared at her with equal shock. Michael Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Industries, the man whose heart she'd broken when she disappeared without a trace after learning of her pregnancy, stood before her. And in his eyes, she saw not the cold calculation of a business arrangement, but a storm of emotions that matched the chaos in her own heart. Neither of them moved, the weight of their shared past and the billions of questions hanging in the air between them. Through the open door, Liam's voice drifted in, asking Megan if his mommy was going to be much longer. Michael's eyes widened at the sound, and Emily watched his understanding dawn on his face, followed by something else, something that made her heart race with equal fear and possibility. The simple business arrangement she'd agreed to had just become infinitely more complicated, and the past she'd tried so hard to leave behind had suddenly caught up with her in the most unexpected way. "Emily," Michael finally said, his voice ruffled emotion, "we have a lot to talk about." The next 48 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity and carefully controlled chaos. The marriage certificate was signed. Liam was admitted to the private wing of Chicago General Hospital for pre-travel evaluation, and Emily found herself sitting in Michael's penthouse office at Reynolds Industries, trying to make sense of how her desperate plan had collided so spectacularly with her past. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's question cut through the elegant space like a blade. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Chicago skyline spread out behind him like a glittering canvas. 5 years, Emily. You disappeared without a word, and all this time. Emily gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. "I tried to find you," she admitted, the words she'd held back for so long finally spilling out. "When I found out I was pregnant, I went back to the hotel. But you'd already checked out. The internship program said you'd left for an emergency in Tokyo. I had no way to reach you. You were in the middle of a hostile takeover," Emily interrupted. "Every time I called, I couldn't get past reception. Then I saw the news about your father's death, the company crisis, your engagement to Elizabeth Moore to save the merger." She swallowed hard. "I was 24, pregnant, and alone. What was I supposed to think?" Michael ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so familiar it made Emily's heart ache. "The engagement was a publicity stunt that never went through. I spent months looking for you after things settled down. Your internship program said you'd left no forwarding address. Your college records were sealed. I moved back to Chicago when my parents died," Emily explained softly. "Changed my phone number, started over. Then Liam got sick, and nothing else mattered except keeping him alive." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Michael moved to his desk, pressing a button on his intercom. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day." He turned to Emily, his expression intense. "I want to meet my son." The walk to Liam's hospital room was tense with anticipation. Emily's mind raced with questions. How would Liam react? How could she explain this to her son? What did Michael really want? They found Liam sitting up in bed, his favorite stuffed dragon clutched in his arms as he watched cartoons. He looked smaller somehow against the stark white hospital sheets, but his smile when he saw Emily lit up the room. "Mommy, the doctor said I can have ice cream later," Liam said, his eyes shifting curiously to Michael. "Is this your friend who's going to help make me better?" Emily watched as Michael took in the sight of his son, his delicate features so like Emily's, but with his blue eyes and determined chin. The emotion that crossed his face made Emily's throat tight. "Hello, Liam," Michael said, his voice gentle. "I'm Michael, and yes, I'm going to help make sure you get the very best care." Liam studied him with the direct gaze of childhood. "Oh, you're very tall," he declared, making both adults laugh despite the tension. "Do you like dragons?" "I've never really met one," Michael replied seriously, "but I'd love to learn more about them." What followed was an hour of Liam's animated explanations about the magical properties of dragons, his favorite foods, strawberry ice cream and chicken nuggets, but only the dinosaur-shaped ones, and his dreams of becoming a veterinarian for magical creatures when he grew up. Emily watched in amazement as Michael entered her son's world with natural ease, his corporate persona melting away as he drew pictures of dragons with Liam's crayons and solemnly discussed the importance of fiery breath. Later, when Liam had drifted off to sleep, Emily and Michael stood in the hospital corridor, both overwhelmed by the enormity of their situation. "He's perfect," Michael said quietly, his eyes still on Liam's sleeping form through the window. All this time I had a son, and I never knew. He turned to Emily, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I understand why you did what you did, given the circumstances, but things are different now. I'm different. Michael, let me finish, he interrupted gently. This marriage may have started as an arrangement, but finding you again, discovering Liam, I'm not letting either of you go again. We're going to get Liam the treatment he needs, and then we're going to figure this out, all of it. Emily felt tears threatening. It's not that simple. You have a company to run, a life I know nothing about anymore. Liam and we're not part of that world. You're my wife now, Michael said firmly. And more importantly, Liam is my son. Whatever comes next, we face it together. He hesitated, then added softly, Unless you regret agreeing to the marriage now that you know it's me. The question hung between them, loaded with years of missed opportunities and unspoken feelings. Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed. The German clinic was calling about Liam's upcoming treatment. As she answered the call, Emily caught Michael watching her with an expression that made her realize this was more than just a business arrangement for him, too. Whatever happened next would change all their lives forever, and there was no going back to the careful distance she'd maintained for so long. The past and present had collided in ways she never could have imagined, and somewhere in the midst of it all, her son's life hung in the balance. As she discussed treatment protocols with the clinic, Emily wondered if she'd finally found not just a means to save Liam, but perhaps the family she'd never dared to dream of having. The private jet touched down in Berlin under a crystalline blue sky, the German countryside stretching out in the distance. Liam pressed his face against the window, his excitement momentarily overwhelming his fatigue. Look, Mommy, the fields are so green. Emily smiled, adjusting her son's blanket. The past week had been a blur of medical preparations, travel arrangements, and trying to navigate her suddenly complicated relationship with Michael. He had thrown himself into Liam's care with single-minded determination, consulted with specialists worldwide, and ensuring every detail of their journey was perfect. Now, watching him help Liam down the jet stairs, supported his small frame with gentle care, Emily felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. This wasn't the same man she'd known 5 years ago. The ambitious young executive focused solely on saving his family's company. This Michael was more mature, more grounded, and the way he looked at Liam made her heart ache with both joy and regret for the years lost. The German clinic exceeded every expectation. Located in a converted castle overlooking a serene lake, it combined cutting-edge medical technology with an atmosphere of peaceful healing. Liam's eyes went wide at the sight of the garden filled with flowering plants and the therapy dogs that roamed the grounds. This is like a knight's hospital, he whispered to Emily as they toured the facility. Dr. Schmidt, the lead physician, reviewed Liam's treatment plan with him in his warmly lit office. The procedure is intensive, he explained, his English precise and careful. We will begin with targeted gene therapy, followed by a series of specialized treatments over 8 weeks. The success rate is very promising, but money is no object, Michael interrupted firmly. Whatever he needs. The doctor nodded, but his expression remained serious. It is not just about the money, Mr. Reynolds. The treatment is demanding on the patient. Young Liam will need all his strength and all your support. As if to underscore his words, Liam had his first major crisis that night. Emily was awakened by his cries, his body racked with pain. The medical team rushed in, but it was Michael who reached Liam first, gathering him into his arms and speaking softly to him until the medication took effect. Hours later, when Liam had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, Emily found Michael on the clinic's terrace, his shoulders tense with barely contained emotion. I should have found you sooner, he said without turning around. All these years you've been suffering, and Michael, don't... Emily moved him, though you didn't know. I made sure of that. He turned to face her, and the raw pain in his expression made her breath catch. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me? Did you really think I wouldn't have moved heaven and earth to help? I trusted you too much, Emily admitted quietly. That week in Chicago, you made me feel like anything was possible. Then reality hit. You were Michael Reynolds, heir to a billion-dollar empire. I was a summer intern with nothing to offer but complications. When everything started falling apart with your company, I would have chosen you, Michael interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. If I'd known about the pregnancy, about Liam, I would have chosen you both over everything else. Would you? Really, Emily challenged. Your father had just died. The company was on the verge of collapse. Thousands of jobs were at stake. I saw the news reports. Michael, the merger with the Moore family was your only option. An option I never took. His frustration was palpable. I broke off the engagement as soon as I found another way to save the company. I spent months trying to find you. Emily. Years, actually. Why do you think I agreed to this marriage arrangement in the first place? Emily stared at him, realization dawning. What are you saying? Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervous energy. When your profile came across my lawyer's desk, single mother, son needing medical treatment, something made me dig deeper. The age was right, the timeline. I had to know if it was you. The implications of his words hit Emily like a physical blow. You knew? Before the ceremony, you knew it was me? I suspected, he corrected, but I wasn't certain until I saw you walk into that room. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. 5 years, Emily. 5 years of wondering what happened to you, why you disappeared. If what we had that week was as real as I thought it was. It was real, Emily whispered, the admission costing her more than she wanted to acknowledge. Too real. That's why I ran. Before Michael could respond, a nurse appeared at the terrace door. Miss Carter, Liam is asking for both of you. They found their son awake but groggy, his small face pinched with discomfort. Can you tell me a story? He asked, looking at Michael with a trust that made Emily's heart clench. Mommy always tells me night stories, but I bet you know different ones. Michael settled into the chair beside Liam's bed, his large frame somehow fitting naturally in the space. Well, I do know one story, he began, his voice taking on a gentle cadence. It's about a businessman who met a beautiful, kind woman one summer in Chicago. She taught him how to see the world differently, to notice the small moments of magic in everyday life. Liam's eyes widened with interest. Was she a princess? No. Michael smiled softly, his eyes meeting Emily's over their son's head. She was something even more special, a teacher who believed in making the world better one child at a time. But one day she disappeared like Cinderella at midnight, leaving the businessman with only memories and a changed heart. Did he look for her? Liam asked, fighting to keep his eyes open. Every day, Michael admitted. And when he finally found her, he discovered something even more wonderful. A brave little boy who reminded him that some stories don't end at midnight. Sometimes they're just beginning. As Liam drifted off to sleep, Emily felt the walls around her heart finally begin to crumble. The past and present had collided in the most unexpected way. And amidst it all, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had found not just a means to save Liam, but the family she'd never dared to dream of having. Emily felt tears welling up as she watched Michael tell their story in a way that seemed magical to Liam, but held so much more meaning for them. Their son drifted off to sleep before hearing the ending, his small hand clutched in Michael's larger one. The next few weeks brought both challenges and unexpected moments of joy. Liam's treatment was grueling, but he faced it with remarkable courage. Michael rearranged his entire schedule to stay in Germany, running his company remotely and spending every possible moment with them. Emily watched as father and son forge a bond that seemed to strengthen daily. Michael learned all of Liam's favorite songs, mastered the art of building Lego castles, and could recite every dragon fact their son deemed important. More surprisingly, Emily found herself falling into an easy rhythm with him, their shared concern for Liam bridging the years of separation. But it wasn't until the night of Liam's most difficult treatment that everything changed. Their son had finally fallen asleep after hours of discomfort, and Emily stood by the window, emotionally exhausted. Michael approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He's stronger than both of us combined," he said softly. Emily turned to face him, and suddenly all the feelings she tried to suppress for years came rushing to the surface. I was wrong, she whispered. Wrong to keep him from you. Wrong to run away. I was so scared of disrupting your life, of not being enough, that I convinced myself leaving was the only option. Michael cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. Emily, you were never not enough. That week with you showed me what real happiness could be. When you disappeared, he paused, struggling with the words. I threw myself into saving the company because it was the only thing I could control, but I never stopped looking for you. And now, Emily asked, her heart pounding, this marriage, this situation, it's all so complicated. Is it? Michael challenged softly. I love our son. And you? His thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I never stopped loving you, Emily. Not for a single day in 5 years. The revelation hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and the weight of their shared past. Before either could speak further, a nurse hurried in with news that would change everything. Liam's latest test results showed an unexpected complication. The next hours would test them all in ways they never imagined, forcing them to confront not just their feelings for each other, but their fears, hopes, and the true meaning of family. The news of Liam's complication sent their world into a tailspin. His body is fighting the treatment, Dr. Schmidt explained. A rare but serious reaction that requires immediate intervention. The next 48 hours will be critical. Emily barely left Liam's bedside, her son's small hand clutched tightly in hers as machines beeped steadily around them. Michael worked tirelessly with the medical team, leveraging every connection he had to consult with specialists worldwide. You should rest, he told Emily late one night, his own exhaustion evident in the shadows under his eyes. I'll stay with him. I can't leave him, Emily whispered, her voice hoarse from unshed tears. Michael, if anything, nothing will happen, he said firmly, pulling up a chair beside her. We're not losing him, not now, not ever. He wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders, and she found herself leaning into his strength, allowing herself to be vulnerable for the first time in years. As dawn broke over the German countryside, Liam's fever finally broke. His vital signs stabilized, and Dr. Schmidt's tense expression relaxed into cautious optimism. He is fighting, he said, reviewing the latest results. And winning. The relief was overwhelming. Emily stepped out onto the clinic's balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air. Michael followed, and without hesitation, she turned and fell into his arms, both of them holding each other as years of fear, loneliness, and unspoken love poured out. I thought I was going to lose him. Emily sobbed against his chest. Never, Michael murmured into her hair. You're not alone anymore, Emily, either of you. The days that followed brought steady improvement. Liam's strength returned gradually, his natural resilience shining through. More importantly, the treatment was working. His test results showed significant positive changes. One evening, as Liam sat propped up in bed drawing pictures with his ever-present crayons, he looked up at Michael with a thoughtful expression. Are you going to be my daddy now? The question caught both adults off guard. Michael knelt beside the bed, his voice gentle but serious. Liam, buddy, I already am your daddy. I have been since the day you were born, even though I didn't know it. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be your daddy forever. Liam considered this with all the gravity a 6-year-old could muster. Forever is a very long time, he said solemnly, but I think I'd like that. He turned to Emily. Mommy, is that okay? Emily looked at her son, their son, and the man who had never stopped loving either of them. Yes, baby, she managed through her tears. That's more than okay. As Liam's treatment progressed successfully, their small family grew stronger. Michael officially adopted Liam, and what had started as a marriage of convenience transformed into something deep and real. The press eventually got wind of the story. The CEO who married a single mother, only to discover she was his long-lost love and their son. But Michael handled it with characteristic grace and determination. On their last day at the clinic, Liam now healthy and full of energy, they stood together in the garden where their journey had begun. The summer flowers were in full bloom, and their son darted among them chasing butterflies. I have something to ask you, Michael said, turning to Emily. Our marriage may have started as an arrangement, but I want to do this right. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring that sparkled in the sunlight. Emily Carter Reynolds, will you marry me again? This time with no contracts, no arrangements, just love. Emily looked at the man before her, the father of her child, the love she'd never truly forgotten, the partner who had proven himself in every way that mattered. Yes, she whispered, her heart full. 1,000 times, yes. Liam ran over, his eyes wide with excitement. Is this like in the fairy tales, Mommy? Are we going to live happily ever after? Michael scooped their son up with one arm, pulling Emily close with the other. Even better than fairy tales, buddy, he said, because this is real. As they stood together in the German garden, a family whole and healing, Emily realized that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect timing or fairy tale beginnings. They're about second chances, about the courage to trust again, and about the kind of love that never truly fades. It just waits for the right moment to bloom again. And in the years that followed, whenever Liam asked to hear a story, they would tell him their own, of a businessman and a teacher, of a brave little boy in a summer in Chicago, of love lost and found again. But most importantly, they would tell him about the power of never giving up on love, even when it seems impossible. Because sometimes the most beautiful endings come from the most unexpected beginnings.